They thought you'd reach out first, didn't they? They always do. That's the twisted comfort of an avoidant, believing you'll always be the one to bridge the gap, that no matter how far they pull away, you'll come chasing after their silence like a lost signal. But what happens when you don't, when the message never comes? When you stop breaking your own peace to check if they're still breathing? That's when 95% of avoidants collapse. Not because they miss you, but because the silence breaks the illusion of control they built around your energy. Welcome to Volume 8, Episode 22, Why 95% of Avoidants Collapse When You Don't Reach Out. This isn't theory, this is psychology explained. See, the avoidant doesn't crave closeness. They crave control. They want to dictate when connection happens, how deep it goes, and when it ends. So when you stop reaching out, you're not just ignoring them, you're rewriting the emotional script they've lived by their whole life. They're used to you being the bridge. They're used to the reassurance. They're used to the message that says, "It's okay, I'm still here." But when that message never arrives, their emotional system starts to malfunction. It's not heartbreak at first. It's confusion. Their ego says, "They'll be back." Their pride says, "I don't care." But their nervous system says, "Something's wrong." That's the moment the collapse begins. In psychology, it's called attachment disorientation. When an avoidant's defense mechanisms meet an unexpected absence of validation, their brain struggles to self-soothe. They told themselves detachment meant peace, but without your emotional pursuit, detachment becomes emptiness. Because here's the harsh truth. Avoidants don't know how to exist without contrast. They feel safest when someone else is anxious. Your chase fed their calm. Your reassurance fed their stability. Your presence fed their power. Take that away, and their sense of identity starts to crack. They don't know how to feel secure in silence. They don't know how to handle peace that doesn't orbit them. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "He who cannot command himself will always obey others." And that's the paradox of the avoidant. They run from control, yet they're slaves to it. They chase independence, yet can't handle genuine freedom. They reject love, yet crave its reflection in your attention. So when you don't reach out, you're forcing them to confront the one person they've been avoiding the most, themselves. That's why silence destroys them. Not because it's cruel, but because it exposes the truth they've buried under every wall, every excuse, every self-protective story. They'll pretend it doesn't bother them. They'll act detached. They'll post something cryptic online, maybe even flirt with someone new, but it's all performance. Their emotional nervous system is in chaos, and every distraction is just a cover-up for the emptiness you left behind. Because, make no mistake, they felt your absence the moment you stopped trying. They just didn't have the words to admit it. When you didn't text back, it forced their subconscious to replay every memory, the safety you provided, the patience you carried, the love that never demanded but always gave. And that's when it hits. They didn't lose attention, they lost security. There's a reason 95% of avoidants collapse when you don't reach out. Their emotional regulation depends on external reassurance. Your silence removes the external system they use to stabilize themselves. It's not that you broke them, you simply stopped fixing what wasn't yours to fix. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And your thoughts have changed. You've shifted from chasing closure to creating peace, from waiting for their call to answering your own purpose. That's what makes silence so powerful. It's not about punishment, it's about protection. You're not ignoring them to hurt them. You're prioritizing you to heal you. And that silence, it speaks louder than any message ever could. So stay locked in till the end of this episode, because I'm going to break down the exact timeline of what happens in their mind when you don't reach out, from ego denial to emotional panic to late-night obsession. you'll understand the full psychological collapse that occurs when the person who was once too cool to care realizes the one who cared stopped. Before we dive in, I want to thank everyone who's been rocking with Volume 8, their breaking point, silence, replacement, and regret. We're building something real here, a movement of self-mastery, not self-pity. To every subscriber, every viewer, every Ace Wisdom channel member, you are the reason this message keeps spreading.
And if you're new here, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and drop a comment below letting me know you're part of the family now. Because the rest of Volume 8, it's going to expose exactly how the avoidant mind breaks down when your silence becomes your power. You don't need to reach out anymore. You already said everything by not saying anything. And by the time they realize that, the collapse will already be in motion. Stay tuned. Let's break their psychology down piece by piece. Stay focused.
Reason 1. Their ego was built on your reaction. Let's get one thing straight. Avoidants don't crave love. They crave control. Every argument, every disappearing act, every breadcrumb of affection followed by cold distance, it all served one purpose, to see if you'd still come running, and you always did. Not because you were weak, but because you cared. But that's the thing about power. They only had it as long as you kept reacting. The moment you stopped chasing, the illusion cracked. See, when an avoidant distances themselves, it's not always about needing space. It's a test. A subconscious power move to confirm that you'll chase after them, proving that they still matter. It's called ego validation looping. In psychology, it's a reinforcement cycle built around control. They pull back, you panic, you reach out. They get reassurance, not from love, but from power. It confirms to them, I can leave and still be wanted. I can withdraw and still be safe. That's not intimacy. That's manipulation dressed up as emotional defense. But here's where the story flips. You stopped playing the game. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped being the emotional first responder to their silence. And that silence from you, it doesn't just confuse them, it shatters the foundation of their ego, because now they can't feed off your reaction anymore. They can't get that dopamine hit from your anxiety. They can't feel powerful by watching you chase. Their ego starves, and when the ego starves, it spirals. Imagine their internal dialogue right now. Why aren't they texting? Did they find someone else? Wait, are they over me? They won't say it out loud, but that silence is eating them alive. They'll check their phone more than usual, scroll through your old messages, hover over your profile without liking anything. Why? Because the one thing that made them feel in control, your predictable reaction, is gone. They don't know who they are without your validation. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And that's exactly what you did. You took your power back by refusing to feed their ego. You realized that silence isn't weakness, it's discipline. It's choosing not to play the same emotional game twice, because every message you don't send reminds them that they're no longer relevant to your peace. That's the first crack in the avoidance armor, the loss of control. See, avoidants crave distance until distance turns against them. They romanticize independence until it feels like abandonment. They say they don't need anyone until the one person who actually cared stops trying. That's when the mask slips. That's when the panic sets in. Because your silence doesn't just say, "I'm done." It says, "I see the pattern and I'm no longer available to play it." They can't process that, because for them, love has always been about who cares less. And you just proved you care smarter. Their ego doesn't know how to compute that kind of detachment. They can't handle emotional equality because equality kills control. So what happens next? They start crumbling internally. They reach out, indirectly. They test your boundaries again just to see if the old dynamic still exists. But this time, it doesn't. Your silence became the mirror they can't escape, and in that mirror, they're forced to see themselves. The manipulation, the pride, the fear, the avoidance, that reflection, it's what breaks them. So when you don't reach out, you're not ignoring them. You're reprogramming your peace. You're teaching your nervous system that you don't chase uncertainty anymore. And for an avoidant who built their self-worth around your reaction, that's not rejection. That's annihilation. Stay locked in, because in Reason 2 we'll go deeper into the emotional crash that happens inside them once your absence starts feeling permanent. That's when their confidence starts to crumble and the walls they built for protection turn into their prison. Reason 2, your absence triggers. Their hidden anxiety avoidance love to act unbothered. They sell the fantasy of being above it all, cold, collected, confident. But behind that mask, there's chaos, because when you stop reaching out, you don't just remove your presence. You remove their emotional anchor. And that's when the anxiety hits. They've spent months, maybe years, convincing themselves that connection is dangerous, that intimacy equals suffocation, that needing someone means weakness. But what no one tells you is this: avoidants aren't calm when you go silent. They're activated. See, under all that pride and detachment, there's a storm they've been suppressing since childhood. A nervous system that never learned how to feel safe in closeness or safe in distance. So when you don't reach out, you're forcing them to sit in that uncertainty, and their body can't handle it. This is what psychologists call the avoidant anxiety cycle. Here's how it works. They withdraw to feel safe. You go quiet to protect your peace. Silence lasts longer than expected. Their brain starts spiraling because control is gone. Anxiety floods in. They'll tell themselves, "I'm fine. I just need space." But that space quickly starts feeling like emptiness. And emptiness? That's their biggest fear. Avoidance fear engulfment and abandonment. So when you were reaching out, they feared losing independence. But when you stopped reaching out, they felt invisible. That's the paradox that eats them alive. They run from love, but collapse when it stops chasing them, because your consistency used to regulate their chaos. Your messages, your check-ins, your presence, it all acted like emotional training wheels. They never learned to balance without you. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." That's exactly what happens here. Your absence makes the unconscious conscious. It forces them to face what they've been avoiding, the fear of truly being alone. Because for an avoidant, solitude isn't peace. It's exposure. Silence doesn't soothe them. It unsettles them. They start to feel that creeping discomfort they can't explain. It's not heartbreak yet. It's agitation, restlessness. The mind whispering, "Something's missing and I can't control it." That's the early collapse. You ever notice how they act fine publicly but start lurking privately? That's not curiosity. It's panic. They're trying to re-establish emotional safety without admitting it. They might scroll through your photos at 2 a.m., revisit old texts, search for clues that you're still emotionally available. Because if you've moved on, if your energy feels different, they can't regulate through you anymore. Their defense system, avoidance, turns on itself. See, when you don't reach out, you remove the one variable they relied on to soothe their insecurities, your effort. Their calmness was never real. It was borrowed from your empathy, your reassurance, your pursuit. Now, that emotional loan's been cancelled, so what do? They start overthinking. They question your silence. They start comparing you to everyone else. And that's when realization creeps in. Nobody else feels like you, because people like you don't just connect, they ground. You were their emotional gravity. Even if they pretended not to notice, they orbited you for balance. And now that gravity's gone, they're spinning. That's what collapse really looks like. Not crying in the dark, not begging for forgiveness, but subtle, restless panic. The kind that doesn't show on the surface, but eats them alive underneath. Epictetus once wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And when you stopped reaching out, you forced them to face how little mastery they truly have. Because while you're learning emotional discipline, they're drowning in emotional confusion. While you've learned to find peace in solitude, they're learning that solitude without love feels like punishment. That's why 95% collapse. Because silence exposes the very truth they've spent years running from. They need connection too. They just don't know how to hold it without destroying it. So, if you've ever wondered whether your silence is being felt, it is. Deeply. It's triggering every layer of fear they've worked so hard to suppress. They'll never admit it. They'll mask it with distractions, new people, temporary highs. But inside the walls are cracking, and it all started the moment you stopped reaching out. Stay tuned for reason 3, where we'll break down the emotional flip that happens when they finally realize you're not just silent for now. You're gone for good. That's when their anxiety turns into full-blown regret. Reason 3. They realize your silence isn't temporary, it's transformation. At first, they told themselves it was just a phase, you were just mad, you'd cool off, you'd text again because you always did. That's what their ego counted on, your predictability, your softness, your emotional reflex to fix what they broke. But this time, nothing. No check-in, no subtle reach-out, no just making sure you're okay. And that's when it hits them. Your silence isn't emotional revenge, it's evolution. See, avoidants expect silence to be temporary. They think it's just a reaction, not a reality. Because in their world, love always circles back. People always come back. You always come back, until you don't. And when you don't, they start to crumble. Because silence is easy to ignore for a week, maybe even a month. But when that silence stays consistent, it starts sounding like truth. And the truth is what terrifies them most. They start noticing the shift in your energy. It's not anger anymore. It's acceptance. It's that calm tone that says, I'm done explaining myself. And that calm, that's your power. Because they can handle your emotions. They've always known how to navigate your reaction, but they don't know how to handle your peace. Peace confuses them. Peace exposes them. Peace forces them to look in the mirror and see exactly what they lost. In psychology, this is called cognitive breakpoint realization. It's when the mind finally recognizes that a dynamic it depended on is gone for good. That realization creates emotional dissonance, a clash between their pride and their panic. Their pride says, I don't need them. But their body says, why do I feel so empty? Their ego says, they'll come back. But their subconscious whispers, they already left. That's the inner collapse. Seneca once wrote, sometimes even to live is an act of courage. And for the avoidant, this stage feels exactly like that. A daily confrontation with their own cowardice. The realization that they ran from the one person who actually saw them, and now there's no one left to understand them at that depth again. They go back through old photos. They hover over your messages. They remember your tone when you cared, your calm when you listened, your patience when they pulled away. They'll scroll and scroll, but nothing hits the same, because the old you, the one who tried, doesn't exist anymore. You've become something they can't reach, and that distance haunts them. Avoidants live in cycles. Push, pull, disappear, return. It's their rhythm, their control. But when you break the cycle, you break their safety net, because without your pursuit they have to face something they've spent a lifetime avoiding: emotional accountability. They can't run from the silence. They can't control the distance. They can't manipulate the peace. You've taken away every lever they used to pull, and that's when their facade collapses. They'll tell themselves stories to numb the blow. Maybe they met someone. Maybe they got bored. Maybe they were never that invested. But even those stories start to lose power when they see your glow up. When they feel your energy shift from emotional attachment to neutral indifference. When your silence isn't ice, it's elevation. Because there's a difference between ignoring someone and outgrowing them, and they can feel which one this is. Here's what's wild. Your silence doesn't just show growth, it redefines it. You used to chase understanding. Now you choose peace. You used to fear being misunderstood. Now you let silence do the explaining. You used to need closure. Now you create it. And that evolution, that quiet transformation, is exactly what dismantles their sense of control. Because for the first time, you're no longer available for their pattern. You're not reacting. You're not reaching. You're rising. Marcus Aurelius once said, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." And that's what you've done. You started living again. You stopped dying in cycles of emotional starvation. While they're haunted by what could have been, you're grounded in what's becoming. Your silence isn't punishment. It's rebirth. It's a new standard, a new identity, a new version of you that doesn't chase potential. You attract peace. So when you don't reach out, it's not about pride. It's about power. It's about teaching yourself that closure doesn't come from their apology. It comes from your growth. And for the avoidant, that's the ultimate collapse. Because they finally realize the person they thought would always care has learned how to live without them. And there's no message, no "I miss you," no breadcrumb trail of nostalgia that can fix that kind of loss. Your silence became the ending they never expected, and the lesson they'll never forget. Stay locked in, because reason 4 goes even deeper. It's where their regret turns to obsession, and the same silence that broke their ego starts rewriting your story. They thought they could replace you. Now they're realizing they can't even forget you. The final collapse, when silence becomes the lesson. And that's it. The silence they once mocked became the silence that broke them. The same distance they swore they needed became the mirror they couldn't escape. Because here's the truth. Avoidants don't collapse when you chase them. They collapse when you stop. When you stop explaining. When you stop reaching. When you stop rescuing them from the consequences of their own detachment. That's when it all comes full circle. They thought silence would make you weaker. Instead, it made them face themselves. They thought walking away gave them control. Instead, it revealed how dependent they were on your stability, because your love wasn't just affection. It was structure. It was order. It was calm in their chaos. And now that it's gone, they finally understand what it feels like to lose peace that once came freely. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That's exactly what happened. Their silence became your teacher. Their distance became your discipline. Their rejection became your redirection. You evolved through the very thing that was meant to break you. And now, they're the ones breaking. Let's be clear, your silence isn't about ego. It's about energy. It's the quiet confidence that says, I no longer chase clarity from people who thrive in confusion. Because peace doesn't beg. Peace doesn't chase. Peace just is. And when you master that, you stop being emotionally accessible to anyone who feeds on chaos. That's when your power becomes permanent. To everyone who's been walking with me through Volume 8, their breaking point, silence, replacement, and regret. I see you. I feel you. And I'm proud of you. You've taken the hardest road, the one where you stop proving your worth and start embodying it. That's the kind of growth most people never reach. That's what separates healing from pretending. So if this episode hit home, drop a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for the next one, because we're not done yet. We're just getting started. The next episode will dive into what happens when your silence becomes attraction. When detachment doesn't just protect your peace, it magnifies your value. You'll learn how your emotional stillness turns you into the very energy they can't stop craving. To every Ace Wisdom family member and every new subscriber joining the movement, thank you. Your presence keeps this message alive. Your healing keeps this mission real. And before you go, remember this: you didn't lose anyone. You just lost the version of yourself who tolerated inconsistency. You stopped chasing chaos. You started choosing calm. And in doing so, you became everything they'll spend years searching for in everyone else. This is Ace Wisdom. Stay grounded, stay untouchable, and as always, peace and power.